Hi, my name is Bethany and I work at the St. Lawrence Obisposies. And I'm going to try to answer some of these social emotional learning questions. The first question is, how can you support mental health for our virtual learners? And I believe the key is building a relationship with your students. So first it would be building community, making sure you have some face-to-face contact, setting those parameters for Zoom that you can interact with them and see them and they can see you is a big deal. I think even with the mask wearing in school, there needs to be a point where you can show them your face and they can show theirs and their facial expressions. So Zoom meetings are definitely important. Having one-on-one contact with those who you find are struggling or families who are struggling is important. The more contact you have, the better. Teaching parents and students the skills to communicate through emails is very important, especially tone and talking to them about all of that. Next question is, how do you teach them to embrace their barriers and move past them? I think the most research says that we should really build up their strengths first and work with kids on finding out what's really good about them, because kids who struggle with social emotional learning are usually have low self-esteem and don't necessarily see the good in themselves. So it's important to look for the good in them, especially since a lot of them are struggle with compliance and getting along with others. You want to help them look at the strengths they have and help them use them to build better relationships with others and do well in school. Also looking at reflection and helping them learn to reflect on a situation and improve makes them realize maybe where they've made mistakes without calling them out and making them feel bad. How do we teach students to understand the barriers they must overcome? So that's very similar to the other question. Again, it's really important to build their strengths and build trust with them in order to help them learn to reflect on maybe their needs without really hurting their self-esteem, which is probably fairly low to begin with. Next, how do we support the students learning remote with their mental health throughout the year? Learning remotely, like I said before, a lot of this is to do with how much you can interact with them, whether it be setting up a group email for your class or individual emails with you, that you just start a conversation. Also, making sure you Zoom kids who really need mental health support, connecting them with the counselor, maybe with you, bringing the mental health counselor into your Zoom meetings so that the students can meet. Him or her will help. But definitely being online, face-to-face, one-on-one is beneficial. How do you make sure to provide the best support remotely and in person to those students struggling with mental health? I would just say remotely and in person, try to get them in contact with a counselor, try to make a connection with them, having day-to-day contact verbally, not just in written form, hopefully face-to-face if you can do a Zoom meeting. Making sure you're checking with the family. That's always important in all this, is checking in with the family to see how the family is doing and giving them hope. Talking about positive things in their life and in your life to make them feel better. A big piece of helping kids who struggle with mental health is giving them hope that there are things will improve. And I think with COVID, it is important to talk about that. Things will improve, because I know some kids struggle with that. How can we support the social emotional health of virtual learners? For all students, like I said, it's contact and making that day-to-day contact with kids, building relationships, synchronous versus asynchronous, doing breakout rooms where you can meet with small groups or individuals, learning who gets along with who and what motivates them to get online, doing little projects. I know Google Classroom and Google Docs, you can set up little projects where you can put kids together in groups online so they can meet and do work. How can we help students recognize and be aware of the ACEs and ways to build resilience? I'm not sure what year they start doing that, and I'm not sure how early you would want them to take this. maybe, is it 4th grade they start taking these? I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that more. And building resilience is all about giving them an opportunity to solve problems. The more problems they can solve independently and are given positive feedback for it, the better. Even if it's a little classroom problem, figuring out maybe some kind of STEM project. Any type of problem solving builds their ability to solve problems and also builds resilience, so that outside the classroom they feel confident in trying to figure things out or asking for support to figure things out and knowing there are people around them to support them. How can I ensure that what we teach students about SEL will be carried over into their everyday life? By doing role play and scenarios. I find that if you just tell them what to do, it doesn't work, but if you have kids get up and role play, and even on Zoom, you can give out skits for them to do within a Zoom to role play different scenarios that are common, especially if you know what kids in the grade level you teach go through. You can give a specific scenario for that situation that occurs, maybe relationship-wise, or a problem with a peer. That helps with carryover. Also having them go home and talk to the parents about what they learned in school that is SEL related, or having them write a reflection about dealing with a similar situation or creating a situation that could possibly occur to share. How can we best meet the SEL needs of our students as they learn remotely? As before, pushing them into your regular activities, meeting with students synchronously, having the counselor come in and do small meetings with the students about different skills that build social and emotional skills, peer relationships. Anything you can do to build that remotely is probably as much as you can get on synchronously, or connect your in-class students with your out-of-class students periodically, if possible. What practice can we have students do in class that will train their brains to be comfortable with delayed gratification? Oh gosh, yes, this is a big one because they're not used to this. You can practice this by telling them things that are going to happen in the future of the class that they will have to wait for. So giving them a time frame to when something will occur and then it happening then. I'm trying to think of an example. If they maybe know at a certain time they're going to get a 5-minute break, waiting for that break delays the gratification, like a mask break or a go outside and do some jumping jacks break. Giving them the time frame for a break and not having it right when you say it is delaying the gratification of it, if you know those are things they like. Scenarios like that. Are any schools teaching students about the dark side of the internet and apps? Yes, there are. Some schools teach about it with a speaker that comes in. There was a speaker out of Canada who came in to, I know, Colton, maybe Parrishville, maybe Hewlton, to speak about the dark side of the internet. And I definitely believe it's something that should be talked to about with high school students. Some students are good at hiding their situations, hoping we don't have kids fly under the radar. This is true, and this is where it is important to be connected with the past teachers, teachers who have longevity in the school district, to get to know families and notice changes in habits. That's why it's so important to meet with kids face to face. How do you balance high expectations and making sure students feel like they are achieving something and making progress without adding undue stress? Being organized, giving them timelines, being consistent, and doing check-ins. Definitely having a routine helps kids feel less stressed. If they know something's going to have to be handed in at a specific time all the time, it is easier for them to deal with that expectation. Also, giving positive feedback helps build them up and make them want to do better. No matter what they're doing, if they're doing anything, it's achieving something. And if you can't get them achieve something, that's when you need to meet with them synchronously, maybe get the family involved, maybe get the counselor involved. What is the best way to help remote learners cope with trauma? This is so difficult, especially with remote, especially if they're in the midst, but it's giving them hope, talking about positive things. Kids who are dealing with trauma don't necessarily want to dwell on it, but do want to hear funny stories, do want to hear positive situations, having personal connection and talking about something silly that happened, or just talking with them, asking them questions about things you know about them, making them feel good about themselves, building trust definitely helps, and giving them hope to say, positive things that could happen in their future, giving positive situations where people have come out of difficult situations is always beneficial for kids. Showing maybe a video about a student who had something they suffered through but is doing well or coping with it is beneficial. Building connections with students that are 100% remote, synchronous work, talking about strengths with them, doing reflections with them, all important. How can I get more info from the website? I'll look into that and get back to this one. With so much less contact interaction, how can we reach isolated parents or even impact helicopter parents? Isolated parents, you might have to go to the house. I actually did this and meet at the end of the driveway. For students who had birthdays during that part of the year, I drove by with a sign that said happy birthday. That is another way to connect and build a relationship. Impact helicopter parents is stating expectations for everyone and reminding them of we all want the best for the kids. That's a good way to have buy-in from the helicopter parents. Helping isolated parents, just keeping them in the mix, making phone calls. How do you build a classroom culture environment where SEL is integrated daily to students? No, it's not just one-time deal. I have a bunch of websites I attached to a document that I will be giving at the end. And there's some websites that share ways you can integrate it into the daily lives. Even instructions you give for different lessons that build relationships and other skills. Definitely useful. How to successfully incorporate in lesson plans. Again, I have information attached that will help you incorporate it online and in school. The impact of online students, again, I will repeat this over and over again, synchronous, and I've seen the teachers who do it synchronous work and make that connection with kids, even if it's for 30 minutes, even if it's as a small group or one-on-one is better than the large group. You will get more with kids. Have an agenda of what you want to talk about with them. Do not just get online and say, let's chat, especially with those kids who are in about 4th to 9th grade. They aren't going to want to say anything in front of their peers. So have an agenda of things to share and chat and places where kids can write, maybe on Padlet or in the chat on Zoom to share with you. So they don't necessarily have to speak. I'll look for that folder to access for you. How can we make a commitment as a district for the long haul providing PD related to SEL? I know the district trauma sensitivity teams in some schools are working on this, so you might want to connect with your trauma sensitivity group to see what they are doing, because that many of them are influencing the districts with the social emotional learning. How can we make the connection with the reluctant learners to help them through these emotional scars? First thing you have to do is build trust with them. Then you need to make sure you're doing kind actions, you're showing up. If they are doing any events, if their parents are recording them, asking for them to send you the recording so you can watch it and then chat with them about it. How can you get students to build trust with someone when they've never trusted anyone before? Trusting them is one. Giving them jobs or roles in your classroom or even in your online community that cause them to believe you trust them. And then having conversations, being present when you have conversation with them without your technology in your face, and following through on things with the students. Also showing them that things are fair. Kids trust adults who make them think things are fair, and that's having specific expectations that are clear cut, following through on those expectations, consequences being fair, giving kids an opportunity to share why things went a certain way, all work. How can we best meet the needs of our students that are virtual? Trying to build the virtual community as close to parallel as the in-classroom community by using a platform that can be flexible with both, and trying to connect synchronously. Big. What tools can I use to set up a safe support place in the classroom and transfer it to virtual learning? I'm thinking, I'm unsure of how to take this, but Google Classroom, you can set up email back and forth between you individually. I would set up an email exchange and have the counselor on it if it's something you want to do that way. I'm unsure if you want it to do with individuals or as a whole group. You can always do a platform where everyone can add to. Padlet maybe. How can we best meet the needs of students that are remote learning? Again, synchronous and having in-person and synchronous similar. Incorporating SEL activities within your curriculum. How can we meet the social and emotional learning needs of remote learner students? Same as the last one. Big things to build trust is to use kind actions, remembering things they tell you and bringing them back up, trusting them, giving trusting roles, presenting them with no tech in front of you, giving kids the benefit of the doubt. That's a big one. Celebrating something with them, celebrating either a holiday or everyone accomplishing something, just celebrating with them. Checking in. Make sure you check in with students. Checking to see if they have their needs met by checking in, asking them, if they ask you to attend something, trying to get there to it. Maybe doing a family Zoom if need be, or Zooming with them and a sibling if that's what they like. How do you deal with outbursts and behavioral triggers from trauma? This is something you might want to be proactive in and learn about the students ahead of time who might have triggers, and then meet with them and set up kind of like a little behavior plan of if they are starting to feel like things out of whack, they'll give you a sign, and then you can have a plan in place for what they do then. Maybe then they go get a drink, maybe they come, maybe they know to do a certain thing, like maybe they do the breathing exercise, or maybe they do a cross body movements. Those are all things you can help them with, but being proactive and setting up a plan for if they feel a trigger coming on, and then having a plan for if there is an outburst. Each school has certain protocols, so I can't be specific, but a lot of times if there's an outburst, you might need to ask them to meet you in the hallway, because that helps them build trust with you, because you're talking to them about how you don't want them to be embarrassed and they don't want to be embarrassed, and that's a big thing. Kids don't want to become embarrassed in front of their peers. When a child endures trauma and their brain growth suffers, how long does it take for them to rework, catch up? Wow, it could be different for anyone. There's a different amount of ACEs each kid might have. Even within one family, the family dynamic. Each kid within a family could have a different reaction to trauma. So it is very individually specific, and how severe the trauma is can make it expand long. But having a relationship with someone positive in their world will increase that transition more quickly. I don't know how better to describe it, but if a student has a positive relationship with a peer or an adult or someone who they can rely on, they will be able to persevere more quickly than if they feel they have no one. So that's why it's important to know your students and to build those relationships and to have synchronous meetings if they are offline, or not offline, but out of school. What can the nurse do? I know from my teaching, I loved our nurse because she was a safe place. And the nurse, it's important for the nurse to be the safe place for students to, whenever a kid comes down, because sometimes these kids are the ones that don't feel well more often, and to be that place where they can go, be the soundboard. And also a nurse is a great person to know that usually has been there a while and can make the connection within the community, and for you to be your in-between and connect you with the parent possibly, or make a connection with the parent because they have to call for different reasons already, to just chat with them and not be a call home for something negative. So the nurse is a great resource to have as another potential positive relationship with the student, and for a student to go if they're having an outburst or feeling a trigger coming on. As an educator, what can we do to reduce the negative impact of social media and apps on our students? Talking to them about the issues with certain apps and the age students should be in order to get on the apps and why that age is important. Doing maybe a little introduction to technology at the beginning of the year of what kids should use and should wait on based on their age, and the importance, of using things that are going to help them rather than kind of waste their time, because social media can have a negative impact, especially if a kid's already not feeling well, and then looking at things that seem amazing online doesn't improve their emotional well-being. Where are the sources for this presentation? This person who did the presentation is, I would say, an SEL guru. As you can see, most recently TikTok has many issues and actually is connected to the dark web. I think I threw some research into work I gave at the end about the negative impacts of TikTok and how it doesn't base its searches for students on the age and what they look at. It just throws out anything, which can get very dark. Kids only learn much of the things can be disproved. I wouldn't go into Google search just to find this. Home learners are going to be harder to identify the signs of trauma. Any tricks to making this easier? Background research on the family and kids on your students before you even have the class, and then meeting with them synchronously, making sure that they show video and voice when they talk to you, engaging with parents. Those things will help. And starting off the year meeting with them, you might see a change over time, and knowing the background, you might see a change at the beginning of the year, and then you'll be able to move forward from there. Getting the counselor involved if this is a family or kid with a history. You'll know if things have gotten worse or better. New students, talk to other districts. How can educators reward students' brains with positive behavior if their home life is negative and what they watch at home is negative? Teaching positive affirmations and doing affirmations with students, talking about how to use them. I've attached some material on that you might want to look at. About having positive self-talk, and this can benefit them at home, talking about doing it before bed when they get up in the morning, so you can actually help rewire through their day, even when you're not around, if you have them doing those things. And talking to them about what they watch, and trying to direct them into things that are good to watch, if possible. How do you teach coping skills? I've attached some things, but Go Noodle has some things online that they can use to help them calm down and deal with different situations. And I would definitely use those pieces of Go Noodle, and I've attached it here. Also, Class Dojo has a whole part on growth mindset, and this is great for positive, like a question was asked earlier about being positive, but Class Dojo and Go Noodle have a bunch of positive support systems to use. I absolutely love the Class Dojo little videos, and they're short, and you can show them in class, but you can also have them watch them at home. How can I make a student feel safer with learning remote when she remains in a stressful household to learn? This is difficult. I would, if the household is stressful, I would definitely connect the student with a counselor and have them also work with them, because they might be in a better position to help them figure out how to deal with the stress, and work with the family to maybe lessen the stress. Why is the percentage being cut in half? Definitely social media and the kids getting onto these sites that don't streamline for age and stick dark things in is one thing. Also, kids wanting instant gratification, kids always thinking something's better. We're in kind of a, definitely we're in a time where students aren't recognizing their things they can control and what they can't control, and it's good. We should really work on helping them recognize things they can control, and working through those, and what they can't, and kind of letting that go. But there was something I had on this. They're focused on goals that have to do with money and image, over which are shown to connect with anxiety and depression, instead of having a positive view on themselves. And there's weaker ties to community and family these days, and that's also why kids get depressed. And that's a big reason why we saw in the past a lot of kids going into college were having more signs of depression, because they were leaving their family and then losing ties. But now the depression has come more from the less ties overall with technology. How can we engage parents in protection from the damage technology can promote? This is a big one to do with damage. Doing a beginning of the year, and maybe throughout your little meetings with parents and students, and going through the effects on technology, and the positives and the negatives, and what to use and what not to use. Because we need to remember, sometimes parents connect schoolwork on Google Classroom to the negativity that can happen on social media, and they are two very different things. How is the best way those students learning remotely and are afraid of COVID? Talking about ways to prevent the coronavirus will help them feel in control of things they're doing. So that would be a good way to help them. Discussing it, meeting with them face to face, getting a counselor involved if it seems significant. How are some things that we as educators can do to help parents? Keeping them involved in your teaching process, keeping them involved in what's going on in your classroom, doing a weekly note to parents and students, even especially if it's a video note, that would be great. Maybe Flipgrid with them. Now that we have this information, how do we deal with this emotional epidemic we will be facing in school? I've attached some sites you go to help you Teach coping skills. I would definitely get your counselor involved in doing little outside lessons, but integrating skills into everyday lessons. A student can easily mask symptoms of trauma. We can't catch them all, and if we do, sometimes it's hard to get them services they need. That is true. That's why it is important when you think about it. I think there's a pretty high percentage of kids within a classroom that have experienced trauma, so teaching your whole classes if in a trauma sensitive way helps. So, and it does not have a negative impact. In this presentation, technology is listed as a cause of increased mental illness in children and youth. Is there studies and measures to indicate how much technology contributes to this? Could virtual learning and resilience on technology for educating children also lead to increased mental illness? I don't think virtual learning is going to increase mental illness. I think not being connected could impact it, but virtual learning is not what is discussed when people talk about the negative impact. It's more about kids getting into social media and then going down the dark web path based on sites they see and opening up uncensored sites. The issues with virtual learning might be the less connection to peers, and that's why it's important to keep some synchronous activities within your work. How can I implement social emotional learning for my remote learners? Look up the specific social emotional skills needed and then build them into your classroom. And I have them in here to work with. Are there newly recognized signs of abuse that we can learn to recognize in a distant learning environment? I think kids who are not getting on, who aren't showing their video, who don't show up for online Zooms, those are going to be the signs you have to start with at this point. And in person, it's probably going to be similar to in the past, but online it might be not showing the video, not speaking, and that's when you want to move into maybe a breakout room, a one-on-one, or connect with the counselor. I've put some PD on a thing to add at the end for strategies. Thank you. I hope this is good. Let me know if you have any other questions.